Disturbing true Easter horror story. The annual community Easter egg hunt at Riverside Park had been a town tradition in Millfield for over 40 years. But in 2019, something happened that would end the tradition forever and leave dozens of children traumatized. Emily Carter was in charge of organizing the event that year. As a third-grade teacher, mother of two, she'd volunteered to coordinate the hunt, which involved hiding hundreds of colorful plastic eggs filled with candy and small toys throughout the park's 20-acre grounds for children aged 3 to 12. On Saturday morning, April 20th, Easter weekend, Emily arrived at the park at 6 a.m. with a team of volunteers to begin hiding the eggs before the 10 a.m. start time. The morning was overcast and chilly, with fog rolling in from the nearby river, giving the park an eerie, dreamlike quality. Let's split into groups. Emily instructed her 10 volunteers. Team 1 takes the playground area, Team 2 the picnic grove, Team 3 the walking trails. Remember, the golden egg with a special prize goes somewhere tricky but not impossible for the kids to find. The volunteers dispersed, and Emily headed toward the oldest section of the park, a wooded area with large oak trees and winding paths. She carried a basket of eggs, placing them strategically behind trees, under bushes, in the crooks of low branches. She was deep in the woods, about 15 minutes into her task, when she found the first egg that she hadn't placed. It sat on a flat rock, directly in the center of the path where Emily couldn't possibly miss it. The egg was white, pure white, not the colorful plastic eggs Emily's team had purchased, but what looked like a real egg, bleached bone white. And it was large, roughly the size of a goose egg. Emily picked it up carefully. It was heavier than she expected, and cold, far colder than the morning air temperature warranted. The surface had a strange texture, slightly rough, and when Emily held it up to the dim morning light, she thought she saw something moving inside. "Must be a prank," Emily muttered, though unease prickled at the back of her neck. Some teenager probably thought it would be funny to leave real eggs mixed in with the plastic ones. She was about to put it in her pocket to dispose of later when she noticed a second one. This egg sat at the base of a large oak tree, also bone white, also too large and too cold. Emily approached it slowly, her unease growing. When she picked up this egg, she heard something, a faint sound coming from inside the shell. A scratching sound, like something was trying to break free. Emily dropped the egg. It hit the ground and cracked open, revealing nothing. The inside was completely empty, just hollow shell. No yolk, no membrane, nothing but darkness inside that shell that seemed deeper than it should be. "Okay, this is getting weird," Emily said aloud, her voice sounding thin in the fog-muffled morning. She pulled out her phone to call her fellow volunteers, to warn them about the strange eggs, but she had no signal. That wasn't unusual this deep in the park, but it added to her growing sense of wrongness. Emily decided to head back to the main area, to gather the other volunteers and investigate these bizarre eggs together. But as she turned to leave, she saw them, dozens of white eggs, appearing on the path ahead of her, leading deeper into the woods. They hadn't been there a moment ago. Emily was certain. She'd just walked this path, and it had been clear. But now, every few feet, another white egg sat waiting, like breadcrumbs leading her into the forest. Emily's rational mind told her to walk away, to go back the way she'd come. But something else, a compulsion she couldn't quite explain, made her follow the trail of eggs deeper into the woods. The fog grew thicker as she walked, until Emily could barely see 10 feet in any direction. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out what little morning light penetrated the clouds. And the eggs kept appearing, always just visible in the fog, always leading her forward. Finally, the trail ended at a clearing Emily had never seen before, though she'd walked these woods hundreds of times. In the center of the clearing was a circle of stones, and in the center of that circle, more white eggs, at least 100 of them, arranged in a perfect spiral pattern. And standing in the very center, motionless, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, dressed in what looked like ragged white cloth that hung from its skeletal frame. Its head was wrong, too large, misshapen, with antlers or branches growing from it. And where its face should be, Emily saw only shadow, a darkness that seemed to absorb the fog around it. The figure's head turned toward Emily, though she saw no eyes, felt its attention fixed on her like a weight. "You've come to the egg hunt," it said, and its voice was the sound of wind through dead trees, of winter settling over abandoned fields. "But you're hunting the wrong eggs." Emily tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She was frozen, rooted to the spot, watching as the figure began to move around the circle of eggs. With each step it took, the eggs began to crack, one by one, and from each shell emerged something that made Emily's mind rebel against what her eyes were showing her. They looked like rabbits, but wrong. Their bodies too long, their limbs bent at joints that shouldn't exist, their heads sporting too many eyes and mouths filled with needle teeth. And as they hatched, they turned those terrible eyes toward Emily and began to advance. Emily found her voice and screamed. The sound broke whatever paralysis had held her, and she ran, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing at her clothes and face, the fog swallowing her as those things bounded after her on their wrongly jointed legs. She could hear them behind her, could hear their teeth clicking together in a grotesque parody of the sound rabbits make, could hear that terrible wind voice calling. The hunt is on. Run, little hunter, run. Emily burst out of the fog and into the main area of the park, nearly colliding with two of her volunteers. "We need to cancel," she screamed. "We need to cancel the hunt and get everyone out of here." But it was already too late. While Emily had been in the woods, families had started arriving early. The parking lot was full, and dozens of children were already playing on the playground, waiting for the hunt to begin. "Emily, what's wrong?" one of the volunteers asked. But Emily was already running toward the parking lot, toward the families, trying to warn them. That's when she saw the eggs. They were everywhere, in the parking lot, on the playground equipment, scattered across the picnic tables. White eggs, bone white, far too large and far too cold. And as Emily watched in horror, children began picking them up, excited by this unexpected addition to the egg hunt. "Don't touch them!" Emily screamed, but it was too late. The eggs were cracking, and from each one, those nightmare rabbits were emerging. Chaos erupted. Children screamed as the creatures chased them across the park. Parents grabbed their kids and ran for their cars. The creatures were everywhere, bounding and leaping with impossible speed, their needle teeth snapping at ankles and hands. Emily grabbed her phone and dialed 911, relief flooding through her when she found she had signal in the main park area. "We need help at Riverside Park. Children are being attacked." But even as she spoke, the creatures began to vanish. As sunlight broke through the clouds, burning away the fog, the nightmare rabbits dissolved like shadows, leaving only broken white shells scattered across the park. The police and ambulances arrived to find dozens of traumatized families, children crying and clinging to their parents, but no physical injuries. No evidence of attack except for those white shells, which by the time investigators examined them, looked like nothing more than broken pieces of plaster. The official explanation was mass hysteria, a case of group panic triggered by something, perhaps a wild animal or a prank, that escalated when children fed off each other's fear. The white eggs were dismissed as an elaborate hoax, the descriptions of the creatures attributed to childish imagination amplified by fear. But Emily knew the truth, and so did every child who'd been there that morning. They'd seen the things that hatched from those eggs. They'd run from them, hidden from them, felt those needle teeth snap inches from their skin. The Easter egg hunt was canceled permanently after that. Riverside Park remained open, but that wooded section where Emily had found the first eggs was fenced off and designated as a conservation area where the public was no longer allowed. Emily never volunteered for community events again. She had nightmares for months, dreams of that figure in the clearing, that thing with antlers or branches growing from its head, arranging its eggs in spiral patterns and waiting for the next hunt. Because that's what it had been, Emily realized. Not an Easter egg hunt for children, but a hunt where children were the prey, and those things that hatched were the hunters. 3 years later, Emily received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photograph of Riverside Park, taken from deep within the wooded section. In the center of the image was that clearing, and in the clearing, hundreds of white eggs arranged in spiral patterns. And standing in the center, that impossible figure, its shadowy face turned toward the camera, as if looking directly at whoever might see the photo. On the back of the photograph, written in spidery handwriting, "Easter comes again. The eggs are ready. The hunt begins soon. Will you come?" Emily burned the photograph immediately, but she knew what it meant. The thing in the woods, whatever it was, wasn't done. It was patient. It could wait years, decades, centuries. Easter would come around again, and again, and again, and eventually it would find children to hunt. Emily moved away from Millfield that year. She heard through friends that another strange incident had occurred at Riverside Park. Hikers reported finding white eggs in the woods, and several dogs that entered the conservation area had gone missing. The town debated closing the park entirely, but decided against it. Too much history, too much tradition. Better to post warning signs and hope for the best. Emily knows that won't be enough. Because some traditions are older than towns, older than Easter egg hunts, older than Christianity's appropriation of spring festivals. Some things were ancient when humans first painted rabbits on cave walls and celebrated the return of spring. And some of those ancient things still remember when spring festivals involved real hunts, real sacrifices, real terror. The eggs are waiting. The hunter is patient. And Easter always comes again.